What's up guys, and welcome to another Rocket League analysis video. So this video is going to be for Kevin, who's and it's going to be the other half of an analysis I've already done from just another perspective, the perspective of the other player in the game. This one, good replay name. Send this one to Australia is the replay name. If I remember correctly, it was that. Let me just make sure. Yep. So, pop. Alright. So, it's straight off a boost. Yeah, it was perfectly okay. Sorry, let's tab out a little bit. I'll just turn the sound down just a tad. Alright, so I don't normally give like mechanical advice, but here's something I can give mechanically wise. Now, when it comes to double touches, there's two things you want to make sure of when trying to read what a bounce is going to happen, what a bounce is going to do. Especially like if you're jumping up before the bounce itself. The first thing you want to do is figure out where the ball, like what angle the ball is coming at the wall. So you've hit the ball towards the wall, but it's not dead center, which means it's going to bounce the same way opposite. So it's gonna bounce in a V shape. It's not gonna bounce directly back to you. So if you jump here directly behind it, it's going to bounce and go this way. You have to account for that by going as far over that way as you can. Usually you do this by taking off slightly to the right, but you can also just use boost. The other thing is you want to check whether it's arcing up when it hits the wall or arcing downwards when it hits the wall. This one isn't really talked about very much at all, and it's probably the hardest thing to read because you have to figure out how fast it's going and how far away the wall is, which is really difficult until you're like in the air. But so if it's arcing downwards, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to pop back and a downward angle depending on how far it's going and how far down its arc is and how fast it's going. If it's arcing upwards, or if it's going to hit the wall at roughly dead straight, it'll come back at roughly dead straight, or it will arc ever so slightly up, which will slow it down a bucket load. Now this one, as you can see, comes back pretty much flat, which is basically the perfect ball. But even from here, you can actually see the V shape that's being made, the two separate V shapes that are being made from this bounce. So when you jump up for touches like that, you want to wriggle your car ever so slightly before the takeoff, so that you can account for that little bit of that you can account for that bounce. Those aren't really talked about in terms of, I don't know why that guy went a bump there. Those aren't really talked about in when it comes to explaining double touches, but they're what I use most of the time when I was first learning on how to do them. So this is interesting from this guy's perspective. You kind of rushed that touch a little bit, but it didn't end up going bad. You made the touch, which is the important thing. That was another rush touch that I think so you actually had space here. You could see the entire field. You knew there was no one coming. So in this position, you want to, if you don't wait for the bounce, which you kind of want to do, you want to try to hit that towards the net, or at the very least towards, basically just slap it at full pelt. You stayed a bit close to this one after the bounce. I personally would have shadowed here, but if you're going to sit here, that's also okay. You just want to turn around as quickly as possible. Basically do what you did. So that's not bad. But if that guy was coming in faster, was a little bit closer, then shadowing would have been a better option. So in this position, there wasn't really much you could do. That was a weak touch. If there's one piece of advice I could give straight off the bat, try to make your touches absolutely boom, like as hard as you can when it comes to shots like that, because it's very easy at this rank to actually just score long range open nets. Like as you could see here, you actually had an open net, but if you had taken this shot, because of how close both of them were, and because that first guy missed and the second guy was running away, you could have taken this as a shot. It still would have turned into him probably saving it, maybe, but you'd be surprised at how many times balls like that end up not actually being saved. So that'd be a piece of advice that I would give. Get some power in your touches, or control them. Like, have a bit of a plan for how you're going to go for a touch. So that was a good little cut in, and a good pass from your teammate, decent kick off, everything like that. Nothing to complain about there. So with that, you went for the ball knowing that you were either you were getting beaten to it by one of these two people. Now, if they were in comms or something like that, Velocity could have called him off it and actually taken a shot there. But either which way, he could have gone for like a 50 or whatever else. I personally, seeing as he actually had gone so far onto this side of the ball, I personally would have just gone for a 50 and dragged it to the center of the field, because it would have gone either to you or to your teammate, but either which way, it would be away from both of these players. So one thing you want to do as well is, when you're manipulating the ball, put it away from players, especially if you need time. And in 2v2, there's a lot of times where you just need time, because mistakes will happen regardless. Even at Grand Champ, mistakes will still happen. Sometimes you have to waste multiple minutes to make them happen, but they will happen. There was a little mechanical error there before, but nothing too major. With this, understand the habit of jumping because of things like demos and stuff, but you didn't actually have to jump here. You could have followed the ball on its way down, because you would have had a decent view of the field if Velocity had have gone for the touch. So I don't know if you guys were in comms there and he called you off it. That's what it sort of seems like happened, but that would have been my piece of advice. Here as well, it's another time where, so another thing that I would say probably is, don't be afraid to let your and to let the enemies get one more touch if it looks like they're probably going to get it, because from where he is, he can't do anything. He can't take an uncontested touch. You could still contest this at any point on its way down. Like, it's very predictable. No matter how he touches this, it's still going to be predictable. So don't be afraid to wait for that, because you'd actually have a little bit of a shot here if you kept on the ground a little bit more. And yeah, that little bit of patience when you knew that there was something predictable that was going to happen is very, very important. So don't be afraid to be patient when there's an easy read to a play. Good damn it! Wait a second. What was this? For sure he hit you. Oh, Sonics, he gypped. Look, I still think that should put a bump on it there, but I'm back. Never mind. Teammate scored. I probably could have just paused it there, but it's fine. So you're ahead now. One thing that's important to remember when you're ahead is not to get conceded on. That should be priority number one, is to make sure you don't get scored on. That was a good dodge. What the fuck has happened to the camera there? That was a good dodge. You got it to a good 50 and stuff like that. You're on your way back. You've got a fair amount of boost. I probably wouldn't have turned here. One thing that I will give you a lot of props for is you didn't go for this. So the advice that I gave in the last video has definitely resonated, because previously double commits in corners didn't seem like too big an issue for you guys to do. Now you're sort of taking your time. You've gone, alright, he's in the corner, which means it's not really wise for me to go in the corner. So I won't go in the corner. Now here, I would have shadowed a little bit more, because he can still beat to this ball. He's very, very close, and the ball's not really going that fast. So definitely, don't be afraid to let the enemies get one more touch on a ball, as long as it's safe. If it's a touch that is going to be slapped, at the net and your teammate isn't there and stuff, then definitely try to cut that off. But if it's not, then don't be afraid to shadow for one touch and then go for a 50 or something like that. That was a good touch there. Now you can be able to score this. Yeah, nice and easy. Good job. You didn't rush it. You made everything nice and easy here. That was a good little play. I want to watch it again. Their teammates sort of panic touched a little bit, but because of how you came in and because of how you touched the ball, it still ended up working out. You had a lot of choices there because of the way the enemy was coming into the ball opposite of the side he was coming, of the side his momentum was traveling. I don't really know why he did that. He could have gone goal side with the momentum that he had, without sort of curving around, making that sort of J shape. But for some reason he did it anyway. Okay, so this might be something that you can make play out of. Yep, teammate's got it. That was a gorgeous shot as well. He aimed that so far over to the right. It's really good. That's another kickoff. I'm also going to give you props for like the hard wins on these kickoffs as well, and for just you can't really do much here. I mean, you could have pathed over the pads beforehand. Sort of one habit that people get into when they get into higher ranks is looking at where pads are using player cam and then immediately turning baseball cam, because you just don't know sometimes. So you knew that those were there before you drove over them, so you didn't really need to watch yourself drive over them so much. You could just path over them and get it anyway. Granted, you probably wouldn't have saved that regardless. That wasn't your fault. But it's a little tip to keep in mind. See, like that position there, you're pathing over them without physically watching them. This is what you did here. I can understand trying to rush the ball for rotation's sake, but you could have gone a little bit slower to force a touch. Or like, one thing I like to do is use audio cues for like boost. Just like hit the boost a couple of times and see if they do something. Another thing you can do is just wait for them to get a little bit closer. He's still not even at the midfield yet, and he hits the midfield right there, which means there's very low chance from the midfield that he can hit a shot that your teammate can't reactively save. It doesn't matter where he puts it, chances are he just won't be able. It's just not possible. There's enough distance between where he is and where the net is that your teammate, if he's in the net, will be able to reactively save really whatever he's doing. So you don't have to rush this. You can let him make a couple more touches directly at your car while you're moving towards him slowly, and then go for either a touch on him or a touch on the ball. Because that's the other thing. He could, if he had to make contact with that bump attempt, then he still even scored on. You want to try to, have the ball be contested in some way. Have the player contested in some way. One of the two. Right, so that was a good shot attempt from your teammate. Now, one thing I see from a lot of people is not respecting bounces. Almost nobody respects bounces. Even players at RLCS level who know exactly how a ball is going to bounce 99.999% of the time, you will still see them respect a bounce just in case, because you never know. Like, when a bounce is about to happen off a corner post, once you have enough hours, you know roughly where it's going to go. You know, like the cone that it's going to go in, and you can position yourself for that entire cone for some bounces, and for other bounces you don't even go near them because you just don't know what's going to happen, especially on balls that aren't traveling very fast. But for this, you want to, especially at lower ranks, you want to actually take it, like just strip a little bit of that off and let the bounce happen first. Position yourself a little bit further away and then use your boost to make the distance. Then you can take shots on net and stuff like that, and even if you don't, it'll still turn into a 50. So yeah, that's definitely something that, like, patience and long shots seem to be two things that I'm noticing so far. A little bit of patience when the enemy is close enough to ball to actually make touches, because at this rank they will actually just make touches over you. For example, there, patience definitely would have helped there. So would a really heavy touch. If you boomed that right at the ball, it still would have had the same effect. Okay, so you got a good beat. It seems like little beats and awkward touches and stuff like that are part of your playstyle. This developing playstyle of yours, it seems to focus quite a lot around these really intense, the little awkward touches whenever you're near the ball. That's a good playstyle to have. You just have to remember that the weaknesses that it does have sometimes is patience. So you want to work on that very much so that you can clean up those little bits of rotation that will inevitably happen because of your playstyle. Good defense, by the way. It was a really good defensive rotation. So here, that little bit of patience really helped, and your teammate should take a shot here, which he does, and he scores it. So as you can see from this position, while you're trying to take the ball in, you're actually being quite patient and taking your time. And you can see that from the time that you've taken, the entire time that you're here, you're in a position where you can do something, and that's important. You also go slightly into the midfield, which offers you another opportunity just in case he pops it upwards to actually take a shot. So that little bit of patience is something you can adapt over time to the other areas of your playstyle, like long shots, taking powerful touches and stuff like that. Granted, the Octane doesn't really lend itself to powerful touches a lot of the time, just because of the front surface area and the way the physics of the front surface and the ball works, and your connection with the ball. So with this, at the start, right, from the way it was arcing upwards, it looks almost like it's going to go for a double touch. Like it looks like something that you could go for a double touch on. However, because it's slowing down so much, you very quickly realize that it actually isn't something, because as it arcs up, continues arcing up, it's going to continue slowing down. It's not going to speed up till it's on its downward. And if it hits the post while it's coming downwards like this, it can go anywhere. You have no idea what it's going to do. That's one of the reasons. That's a big reason why a lot of that's a big example of the reason why you respect bouncers. Goalposts and crossbars are a perfect example of why you have to give space to bouncers, because they can go anywhere, and it can be the difference between a goal scored and a goal not scored. Here, it was good fortune. It slowed down enough that it didn't touch anything at all. But if it had hit this goalpost along the top, it could have bounced down and in. It could have bounced down and out. It could have bounced down and then bounced up again. It could have done any number of things. It could have started spinning and moved in these funky little ways that are really, really painful to deal with. So you want to stay grounded with stuff like this. But of course it went in, so who am I to judge? So with this bit, you went for a 50, which was fine. So you went to start shadowing. I would have said maybe keep shadowing, unless he goes for a bump, which he obviously didn't do. But definitely want to, like, in this position, you're not actually in an unsafe position defensively, especially if instead of turning halfway around again, you were facing how you were like a tenth of a second before that. So you went to here. You use a little bit of boost to go towards the ball, right? Don't be afraid to use a little bit of boost to go back from the ball, to go away from the ball as well. So you can get a little bit of space and rotate defensively. Now you could rotate here, go a little bit further, go infield a little bit, and get far post or semi-far post before he had a chance to even do anything. Your teammate did a good job disrupting him, but he was still recovered too quickly for you to be able to do anything. So as you can see here, you're not goal side. If he had pulled a 50 off here, it actually would have gone into your net. So you definitely want to be careful with that. Of course, you ended up centering anyway, but he missed. So yeah, it's not a big deal. But yeah, shadowing isn't your enemy, and I've noticed that like a lot of people seem to only half shadow. You're about to beat that guy up. It seemed to only half shadow. They shadow for like a tenth of a second, and they turn back around, and they shadow again, and they turn back around again, just to commit to one. But that's not a big issue right now. That's your defensive rotations, all in all, are pretty good. But all in all, the pieces of advice that I would give would be definitely patience. Don't be afraid unless there's a shot on net that's incoming or imminent, or you're closest to the ball and can make an effective disruption, as in you're hitting either the ball or the player, not just making a flick happen because they're still too dangerous. Unless you're making a disruptive play happen in some form that's disruptive enough to actually stop the play for a short amount of time, like stop it in its entirety, you definitely want to give a little bit of extra room to the enemy to make a touch or two. Hitting the ball, hit it really hard. Hit it as hard as you can, especially if you have space. If you have space to make a decent play, don't be afraid to take advantage of that space, because usually the enemies, like, they'll give you opportunities. Even at the highest level, there is still little minuscule opportunities all over the place, and you just have to take them. Now, these opportunities aren't based on the ball's positioning or the enemy's positioning. They're based on your positioning. You can't make these. You can't be in position for every single possible. You can't be in position for every single possible opening that will occur. What you can do is you can make every single opening that you are offered into a play. And that might not be a play that goes in necessarily, but it's a play that causes pressure. It's a play that allows you time. It's a play that ticks time off the clock. It's a play that it does something. It's productive. So don't be afraid to make those plays happen. And even taking a long shot is still taking control. It might not seem like it, but it is, because you're taking control of the entire field. You are forcing your enemy to do something, because if they don't do something, the ball's going to go in, and they can't allow that. So taking shots on net is still control. It's a different sort of control, but it's still control. All in all, though, that's really the advice I give. I'm glad that the advice that I gave in the last analysis has really helped. There is way less double commits. You can see from the way you guys move around the field that you're giving each other the right amount of room, the right amount of space. You're both having equal chances on offense and defense. There is a few passes, there's a few misplays, but there's a few beats, there's a few, but there's a lot less of double committing. There's a lot less of unnecessary bits and pieces. The overall gameplay of your rotations has cleaned up quite a lot. So yeah, those are really the bits of advice that I could give. Watch this a couple times if you need to, so that you can understand what I've talked about, so you can analyze your own gameplay a little bit. And yeah, I hope to see the improvements and how you guys keep improving over the course of January. And that's all for this. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you there's in the description there's talks about if you want something like this done for yourself, then go for goals. Yeah, thanks for watching.